What is gluten? Okay, so I want to explain to you what is gluten and why it's important to understand what gluten is when you're baking. Gluten is proteins that exist within wheat flour and other types of flour. Not all flours, you get a lot of gluten-free flours. But today we're talking about wheat flour. And gluten only exists once you start to add water to flour. That allows the two proteins that are in there, called gliadin and glutenin, to start to form chains together, and then they make this gluten network within the dough. So I want to physically show you what gluten looks like and how it reacts in the different flours that you can buy, and why it makes a difference when you're making bread. So I've got 3 doughs here. I've got a plain flour dough, so that would be the equivalent of all-purpose in the US. In the UK we call it plain flour, and that's roughly about 11% protein. You can buy plain flour in the UK between 9 and 11% protein. If you look on the nutritional guide on the side of the bag, it says protein gives you an amount in grams per 100 gram. That's the roughly percentage of protein you get, and that percentage is a rough estimate of the strength of the gluten. So 11% protein is somewhere not really very weak, but not strong. Cake flour, pastry flour can go as low as 6% protein. So this is 11%, it's almost as strong as the weaker strong flours. And I've got strong white flour in this bowl, which is 12 to 13%. I haven't actually got the nutritional profile on this because I buy it from a mill that prefer not to put the protein amount onto their bags. But working with it, I would say it's a mixture of Canadian and English wheats, and it's about 12 to 13% protein. So it's on the weaker end of the strong bread flours. And then here we've got something that we buy in the UK as very strong bread flour, and in the US is probably called bread flour. It's Canadian, 100% Canadian wheat, and it's 15% protein on the bag. So in the UK, that's the strongest bread flour we can get. We can get very strong, up to 16%, but this is where the very strong is for the UK. So if you're in the US, this is probably labelled as strong bread flour. In the UK, very strong bread flour. I just wanted to show you, each of these doughs are made with 200 grams of flour, and then I've mixed them with 140 grams of water. So this is the very strong, and it was mixed probably about 10 minutes ago. So if I just show you what that looks like, I can feel that resisting me, that very strong. It feels quite a resistant, elastic dough as I'm stretching it, and I hope you can see that. As I'm stretching, it's pulling out. I can see the gluten strands as I'm pulling. They're quite strong, and it was only mixed 10 minutes ago. And by mixing, I mean, just a mixing enough for the dough to come together. This is our mixture of UK and imported wheats, up to 13% protein, this one. I can feel the gluten in there, but it's not resisting me as much as that one that's 15%. Leaving more dough on my hands than the stronger gluten mix, which is interesting. And this is the 11% plain flour, known as all-purpose in the US. Can you see how I can that's really extensible, not very elastic. Can you see how much easier it breaks when I'm pulling it than the other two flours? Okay, so you can tell straight away it's a weaker gluten. In the UK, we choose plain flour to bake cakes, biscuits, cookies, that sort of thing. And the reason for that is we want this weaker gluten flour, because what gluten actually does is it provides a strong framework to build strength into your dough, so that the air that gets trapped in there during the yeast production in bread making can blow up those balloons of gluten and create that beautiful crumb. We want the opposite when we're making cakes. We want a tender crumb that gives you a tender, beautiful soft cake. So we want a weaker gluten flour for baking cakes, cookies and biscuits than we do for bread making. Can you see, this is an indicator for me of a weaker bread flour, when it sticks so much to my hands like that. So I've lost a lot more on my hands when I'm messing about with that weaker protein flour than I did with the stronger protein flour. What I'm going to do now is, what we have here is they are all roller milled white flours. So they are all just the endosperm, which is the centre of the wheat grain. Just that white endosperm. There is no bran, no germ in any of these flours. And I've done that particularly because I want to now wash off anything that isn't gluten. And what will be left, so I'm washing away, this is basically protein and starches, okay? And I'm going to wash the starches away. Now, if I had a stone ground flour, there would be germ and bran to wash away, whereas these are all just the endosperm. I'm going to wash the starches away from that, and we can see how much gluten each of those has. Going to put them under a running tap and wash away any starches so that we're just left with the gluten. That was a messy and long process, washing the starches out of those flours. But as you can see, so this is the 100% Canadian very strong flour that we can buy here in the UK. And you can see that has got really strong gluten, and it wasn't left to develop for very long. I mixed it, gave it 10 minutes, didn't do any stretches and folds to speak of, and that's the gluten that's resulting. Okay, so lovely and elastic. This is the strong white flour. You can see it's a little bit less strong, less elastic, rips more easily. Again, not well developed gluten, just mixed and left for 10 minutes. So it hasn't been well developed, and I will show you what well developed gluten looks like in comparison so you can see. But you can see what this gluten looks like in comparison to that one. Less strength, but still holding together, still got some elasticity and extensibility, and plain flour. So this is the one that's about 11% protein. It has some elasticity, but not as much, and breaks up. Now, when I was washing this plain flour, it was a lot more stringy. Okay, it was breaking up into much smaller pieces, and I had to use quite a fine sieve to catch it all. And then I started to squeeze it to get the last bit of starches out, and it came together in this ball. But you could definitely tell the difference as I was manipulating it under the water. It was just stringy and breaking apart. And you can see that it is a lot weaker than the other two. The gluten that I washed yesterday has been sat for about 24 hours. And I wanted to show you what it's like now. One is the plain flour. Okay, so you can see how those gluten proteins have really joined together to make this gluten. Now, it feels quite flabby, but considering this is only 11% protein, you can see I really can stretch it almost to window pane before it breaks. It's just like handling chewing gum. It's exactly that texture. Okay, so that's the plain flour. This one is the strong white, that's between 12 and 13% protein. Now this one has got more strength. I can feel that, it's sort of resisting me a bit more. And I can really give it a good stretch. There you go, you see that. Okay, and this one is the very strong, which is 15% protein. And I can really stretch that out. You see, it's like a proper balloon. So that is how gluten works. The proteins glutenin and gliadin that are within the flour, as soon as you add water, they can form chains. They create this structure within the flour, and normally when you've got the starch in there, it's not as clear to see this structure that is like a balloon. The yeast then expels carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide fills the gaps within the dough and stretches against this gluten framework and creates these bubbles in your bread. And the stronger your gluten, the larger the bubbles, the better the bubbles will be. Can you see that's so fine, that window pane there of that very strong flour? And that's when you get these beautifully risen breads with big holes in them that you see on Instagram all the time, because this is 100% Canadian American flour. In the UK, our strong flour does not replicate that, so do not expect your loaves to be the same. They aren't. Okay, you can see I can stretch it, but it breaks more easily, okay, because it's got that lower protein, lower gluten amount in it. And that's the plain flour. So this is the strong flour. It stretches a bit more than the plain flour does. There you go, but not as much as the very strong flour before it breaks. So I hope this gluten wash has shown you what gluten looks like without the rest of the flour involved, and how gluten works so that you can understand it more easily.